So here we are. So just to reiterate the format for today's webinar, it's all about neurodiversity in hiring. So most of you on today's webinar are sitting within senior HR positions. So this will be a subject that I guess will be of great interest to many of you. The intention we have is to start the session by asking the audience just to very briefly introduce themselves, maybe 30 seconds, to talk about what they're hoping to get out of the webinar. After that, Stephen is going to provide a 10-minute overview on his personal journey as a neurodiverse individual. He'll expand a little bit more on proactively seeking out neurodiverse talent, how that can positively impact your business in multiple ways. And following that intro, we intend to devote 20 to 25 minutes perhaps to a collective Q&A. I'm sure everyone will be bursting with questions, maybe seeking some advice. Anything you're seeking clarity on, feel free to throw that in the mix. In the event that we do overrun, we'll be providing Stephen's contact details in case of any follow-up questions. And of course, we've just switched on the recording button, so those who couldn't attend today will be able to pick up later. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Stephen, to give us an introduction of yourself and your personal journey to date.
Hi, firstly, thank you for the introduction and thank you everyone for joining us today. So my name's Steve. And I'm going to keep this as personal as I can because I think that this is all about individuals and it really helps to put that individual face onto it. So I currently work as a head of product at a tech company called Pointr, and my journey's been a very mixed bag. And I'll start by the difficulties I had early on before my career at school, that with neurodiversity, I found that often it wasn't recognized, and when it was looked at in the wrong way. So it always had a negative facet. I had lessons in school telling me about how to fill out fast food applications. I had lessons on showing me what colours were, because my writing wasn't very neat, my spelling wasn't great. But I went on to do a degree and then a master's, mainly to prove people wrong. And why I think it's important to really kind of bring awareness to this is because for every person like me that really pushed through that and kind of gritted it to succeed despite everyone, there's probably 10 other people that gave up because everyone told them they were stupid. And I think it's very important. Now, my career really highlights the real strength of neurodiversity. I graduated during a recession, so I worked on a help desk, as many people did. And I've worked in data, so I've been a business intelligence developer, a data analyst. I've been a solutions architect. I've been director of solutions architecture. I've been head of development, and most recently head of product. So as you can see, it's quite a mixed bag, and with a degree in programming, a master's in networking data communication, I've done a little bit of everything. And you'll find that's quite common in people that are neurodiverse, is because keeping focus on one thing can be quite difficult, but also we have a very good ability to learn when we're motivated. So if you have a motivated person that's neurodiverse, they will absorb everything and pick everything up as they go. But where I really think that hiring a neurodiverse person and seeking them out is for those really difficult to fill roles, really, really big picture roles, because most of us have experience in so many different things, and we're very happy to learn and very quick to learn, as long as we're motivated. Now, I work at a company currently with a CEO who's probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever worked with. And that in itself makes it very difficult, because he founded the company, he could do every role at the company better than everyone else. So hiring another normal person that just does a role really wouldn't fit the bill, because they'll never do anything to his standard. I mean, not to say his standard is unrealistic, but it becomes difficult. Where someone like me that's neurodiverse really comes in, and it was a difficult role for them to hire, is that I don't have to be better than anyone. I just have to be different. And that different perspective means that we can produce something in a product that no one else really thinks about, because we have someone that thinks differently to everyone else. If you have 100 geniuses in a room, none of them stand out if they're all exactly the same. If you get one person that's slightly different, they do. Now, for those of you that saw the podcast, I apologize, I'll repeat myself. But I can look at some famous people throughout history, and I'll give three technologically minded geniuses from our past. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Albert Einstein were all neurodiverse. All of them are very, very odd people in their own ways, and all of them changed the face of the world because they thought about things just a little bit differently. And really, that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. The other topic I would really like to address is, I know there's like to be a lot of people from HR interested in this, which is you're going to be looking at accommodations and all those various bits and pieces. The most difficult thing in my working career I've had with being dyslexic, being neurodiverse in other ways, is people trying to tell me what they're going to do for me, because every single person needs something different. So for example, I've actually published. I read 100 books a year. So my reading and writing is actually pretty decent because I've worked at them. I don't need accommodations there. But I can count, I can't count the amount of times that someone has tried to give me accommodation with my grammar or with reading or with a special screen that helps me distinguish letters. And I didn't need any of that. The best HR person I've ever had, or best accommodation I've ever had, is where I currently am. The HR lady that came in messaged me and said, Steve, I understand you're neurodiverse. What can we do for you? She didn't make any assumptions. She didn't go and give me a list of things. She just told me, what do you need? Now, it may be handy to have a list of things you can do, but it's always best to just ask the individual. Because my answer was nothing. I just need patience when we're using things like Jira, for example, because my company heavily uses it. Because I'm a bit slower at Jira, but I'm very good at other things. And that was it. It was a nice conversation. No accommodations really had to be made, but everyone understands each other, and I felt supported. So those are kind of the main topics I wanted to kind of cover in my introduction. So I'll hand to you, Aaron, or I will waffle for the next 20 minutes and bore everyone to tears.
I'm sure you won't. That was a great intro. Thank you very much, Stephen. I jumped ahead inadvertently, actually. I was meant to go around the room and get some very brief introductions. So if we may, Carl, can we come to you? Just perhaps provide us with a 30-second introduction of who you are, what you're hoping to get out of the session. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yes. Hi. So my name is Carl Eidsgaard. I've done a roundtable with Jurupa in the past, so some of you might know me from that. And I've partnered with Jurupa to focus on AI more specifically. So Aaron and I, we are doing a joint AI venture, and I'm very much an AI call it enthusiast. Been in the field for over a decade. On the topic of neurodiversity, I've always sort of suspected that I might be a neurodiverse individual because the description provided by Steve here fits me very well in retrospect, but I've never gone to get any diagnosis for it. So yeah, hopefully that was less than 30
Excellent.
seconds.
All right. Thank you, Carl. That's much appreciated. Carol, are you there, Carol?
I am.
All right. Feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself to the group.
Okay, my name is Carol Steinbach, and I work in HR for a technology company, and I'm always just looking to ensure that I can expand my knowledge and how to better work with individuals we hire or within the recruiting process. So I'm just excited to hear what's going on out in the world outside of my little four walls.
You're on mute, Aaron, I think.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
So sorry. I was just saying thank you so much. You've come to the right place. So
Okay.
let me edit that out later. No, it's good. Thank you so much, Carl. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Petra, let's come to you. I know you're traveling around Helsinki right now.
Yeah, taking a bit of a walk. Yeah, really similar to what Carol was saying. So I'm the chief people officer at a technology company called M-Files, and I'm just really interested in understanding diversity in all its forms and kind of starting to think that being on the spectrum means everyone's somewhere on a spectrum or on several different spectrums, and we're all different in different ways. So it's really, and I loved what you said, Steve, about, just ask and not assuming. It's not like we need a diagnosis for stuff. It's more like, how can we be more empathetic and listen to people more, and just, help people to thrive in whichever way they thrive. So that's kind of, I'm just here to get those brain cells to find each other and have an insight.
Awesome.
The two brain cells, they're in there somewhere.
They seem to be working pretty well. Thank you so much, Petra. Appreciate that. Joanna, can we come to you next? Not sure if you can hear us, Joanna. Okay, maybe we'll come back. Siobhan, are you there, Siobhan?
Hi there. Sorry, I can't go on
Hi.
camera.
That's okay.
Because my laptop is giving me issues, so I'm on my phone. So sorry for joining late.
Oh, it's perfectly all right. We're just going around the room and asking people to provide a very brief introduction, and if there's anything specific they'd like to get out of the webinar today.
Okay. From my side, I head up the HR function for a company called ESAP, which is predominantly manufacturing for the UK and Ireland. On the HR side, I've only been in the UK 2 years. So what I'm looking to get out of today is to learn as much as possible, especially given the fact that neurodiversity is a hot topic at the moment. And I think the more I can learn, the better equipped we can be. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of today.
Excellent, excellent. You've come to the right forum for sure. So thank you, Siobhan. Stacey, how about yourself? What are you hoping to get out of today's session?
Okay, well, my name is Stacey Smith. I'm a senior director of talent strategies at a company in Denver, Colorado that focuses on mergers and acquisitions. For me, I'm early in this journey, but I just want to learn as much as I can about neurodiversity and then just broadening the candidate pool and how we can find, the best qualified candidates for our roles and just exploring those different candidate pools.
Awesome. All right, fantastic. Steve, let's come to you. Can you give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to get out?
I am Steve. I think you've come to me.
Whoop, wrong. I was looking at the wrong name. My apologies. Trisha, let's go to you, Trisha.
The tough act to follow. Okay, so Trisha Moody, I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at a company called Aptos. We're a technology company headquartered outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I lead obviously the recruiting piece, as well as I sit on our global culture team and co-lead that. So just, interested as far as on the neurodiversity, both on the recruiting front as well as on the inclusivity front, to hear how to continue our journey along it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Trish. I really appreciate that. Before we go into the Q&A, let me just give one more shout out to Joanna Luth. Can you hear me, Joanna?
Hi, sorry. Yep, it's Joanna, and I joined a little late, so I'm so sorry. I'm the Chief People Officer at Higher Logic. We are a software company. We're fully remote. So back in the day, we were headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, but now we're distributed. I think we're in like 35 states, 3 countries. My main purpose for joining was, again, just to make sure that we're taking into consideration in our recruiting process how to accommodate neurodiverse folks, especially if we don't have any knowledge. Like, is our process inclusive regardless of who the person might be applying, to make sure we can cast the widest net and make it the most accessible process.
Great, awesome stuff. Okay, so I guess maybe a good place to start, Steve, might be to talk a little bit back to basics. Can you explain in layman's terms what neurodiversity is and why it's important for some workplaces to be able to recognize and support it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real can of worms of a question, because neurodiversity is whatever an individual is essentially at this point. You have dyslexia, you have ADHD, you have people that could be autistic, you have Asperger's, you have a million neurodiverse conditions. So it's very much the same as, I'm going to use a really, really bad comparison, but it's the best way I can ever describe it. People talk about cancer. Cancer is not one thing. It is a word to describe something that can happen anywhere on your body. It's a mutation. And neurodiversity is no different. It's slightly less negative, obviously, is that every single manifestation is different. So I was tested when I was 15 or 16, and it came up with dyslexia. Well, now dyslexia has dyslexia, dyspraxia. There's about 20 dys words to break it down into different. That didn't exist when I was younger. So I don't know what my exact manifestation of that is. So neurodiversity really is an individual that processes things differently. Some people will be quicker, some people will be slower, some people better with numbers, some people will be bad with words, some people will be this, some people will be that. But in all cases, at least in my experience, it's not all negative and it's not all positive. So I will say the most negative thing about myself is two things. Is one, I rely quite heavily on motivation. When I lose motivation, it's very hard for me to process. But when I'm motivated, I will fly through tasks faster than anyone I've ever met because I really want to do it. And the second factor is that with structure, I can manage it because I've learned how to manage it for my career, but I've really struggled with it. So using things like Jira, using ticketing systems, following processes, they're not all my strong suit. But if I need to come up with a process, or I need to define something larger, or I need to look at a roadmap, I'm usually very, very good because I can understand how pieces interlock. So I think that's kind of where I would define it as. Sorry, it was most inappropriate of comparisons, but it was one used recently, and it's the best way I can think to illustrate. Don't think of neurodiversity as one thing. It's a million different things, and there's no one solution.
Multiple. Yeah, reasonable enough, I think. And I'm not sure if anyone else is kind of having the same question, but one of the things I'm thinking about is what would be some of the most common misconceptions about neurodiversity in the workplace?
I think the biggest one is that we need accommodation. Some people will absolutely need accommodation, but some normal people will need accommodation. What if you have kids and need to leave early? What if you need to go to a doctor's appointment? What if you're a carer for an elderly parent? You may need accommodation, but you might not, because you might just be a normal person that goes 9 to 5 and then you go home. Same with anyone that's neurodiverse. Maybe you don't need anything, and maybe you do. Equally, at one job, I may need some accommodation because of the way they work, and another I won't. So I think the most important thing is to not be presumptuous. So making sure that people know that they can be supported. So reaching out and saying, hey, I understand this. It's not a stigma. There's no problem at all. Let us know if we can do anything. We do have these things available. If you're interested, let me know. It's usually the best thing. Because the first thing is that there is a stigma around neurodiversity, so people often don't want to talk about it. So removing that stigma is the first thing you can do. Approach them, be friendly. This isn't a big deal. Don't worry about it. Let's have a chat. Really sets people at ease, because then they might talk. Most of these people won't reach out to you. You won't even know half the neurodiverse people in your company because they don't want to talk about it. And second thing is accepting that every one of them is different. And although it's nice to have a clean process that says we have a dyslexic person, they have this special monitor or this special font or special software, that doesn't work for everyone. And in some cases, they'll accept it feeling guilty. So I had a company that spent huge amounts of money on audio dictation software, Dragon. They got a professional license for it. And they're like, yeah, we got this. It'd be great. You don't have to type anything. And I very guiltily kind of tried to use it, but I can type at 220 something words a minute. And my speech doesn't really match up to that. I can't speak that quickly. So it wasn't productive for me. And there was really good intent behind it, but it wasn't productive.
So the key is proactive empathy, if I can put it like that. It's taking that interest, that care, understanding, seeking knowledge, helping you, enabling you effectively as a neurodiverse individual.
Yeah, I think I call it opening the door. So your door's open, walk in, have a chat if you want, don't if you don't want. Just making sure people are available there. People know that you're available is the only important thing. Because sometimes feeling supported is as much as knowing there's support there, even if you never use it.
I'd like to maybe bring Joanna in on this particular thought. So you mentioned, Joanna, at Higher Logic, you're fully remote. So I'm anticipating one of the questions might be around how do you tailor your recruitment process or your sourcing process to make sure it's more accommodating, it's more friendly towards neurodiversity. Does that kind of feature in how you structure things currently, or are you looking in that direction?
So it's looking in that direction. We have our process involves our recruiter reaching out to candidates to schedule time, and then subsequently Zoom meetings, which is fine, right? It's a fine way to do things. one of the things I'm thinking about is, do we provide the questions we're going to ask in advance, or do we at least type them in the chat as well as verbalize them so that people can refer back to? So I'm, again, trying to think inclusively about how to meet all learning styles. And I'm not trying to say learning styles equal neurodiversity, but again, to make an inclusive process that works for as many people as possible.
It's a good question, and the answer is quite difficult in itself, because the first thing I would note is if someone asked me in an interview if I needed any accommodations, I would under all circumstances say no, because I immediately think that I'm going to be a disadvantage in the recruitment process. Now, I'm being honest with you because it doesn't serve a purpose to lie to you here and say, oh yeah, do this and that. I think the best way you can do it in a recruitment process, firstly, I think talking is very, very good. For someone like me, I'm extroverted as anything, and written would be difficult. But then I could think to, well, my partner, she has ADHD and she's introverted. So when she's speaking, she can take a little bit longer to think about something sometimes, but when she does come up with the answer, it will be probably 10 times better thought out than myself. I think that the best way of doing that would be when you're in an interview, having a chat, and at the start saying, look, we don't know if you're neurodiverse or not, we don't know if you need any accommodations, but if you need time on any of the questions, please let us know. If you need me to write, let us know. Give them the offer without assuming, but without asking them directly, because then it means someone that wants to stay silent still can, but someone that really could use an accommodation will take you up on it. You should be able to spot the majority of people that are struggling. So if someone gets a question and they're sitting there and they're drawing a blank and then they're coming up with a really good answer, chances are they have something similar to ADHD or autism, and they're spending a little bit longer to think about their answers. And just being mindful of that but not reacting to it will probably be the most helpful thing, because it will grow their confidence and it will make them confident that, oh, it's fine to have a minute.
Yeah, very good answer. Does that help, Joanna, in terms of looking forward and structuring the best practice?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great. I can almost see an AI use case here. That's probably a discussion for another day, but based on some of the things Carl and I were talking about with digital AI guardians being able to assist in that regard. Feel free to add a comment to that, Carl, if you wish.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, obviously, AI as an assistant is, something that could be massively valuable. I mean, I briefly mentioned that I suspect that I'm neurodivergent, and call it in the year and a half since the introduction to ChatGPT, there is a lot of things that used to take me a lot of time to do that has just gotten a lot easier. So I can definitely see a future where AI will be massively helpful, not just in sort of mapping, but also helping out with tasks that is, or that I would normally find boring, to put it that way.
Taking away the grunt work to a degree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to throw in the mix?
To add on to Carl's, something that I'm very sorry, but Carl, you've inspired me now, is that something that someone recently spoke to me about that they're allowed to do an interview, is they had a number of tasks that they had to do for the interview. And the interviewer just turned around and said, we're going to simulate a real work environment, so I'd like you to share your screen because I want to understand your process. Go and do whatever you like to achieve this task. So it might be a question of, if you think of technology, can you go and build me a very rough architecture diagram for blah, blah, blah? Or could you show me how you would approach the following solution? And I imagine that someone opening up ChatGPT on there would be a pretty good flag. But to me, that would also be a really positive indicator because it's a tool at your disposal. And I thought that was a really good way to set a task to someone on the interview. Because asking someone to remember everything off the top of their head, it's not going to happen, not least for someone that's neurodiverse. But getting to a task with, realistically, whatever they have available when they're working, so, Excel, Google, Wiki, ChatGPT, far more realistic test. Quite often you find that the difficulty is knowing what to Google, not knowing the answer immediately. when I was on a help desk, 90% of my job was Google. It didn't make me stupid. It just meant that I hadn't come across that problem yet. But knowing how to Google it is what they paid me for. So I do think that AI tools, but also allowing when you do tasks, people to do tools are fantastic. The other point you could do is start at the recruitment process. So my recruiter for this last role is actually neurodiverse, champion himself, and he found out I was neurodiverse and he shouts it from the rooftops because he wants to do it. But during the process, he knew before I'd even spoken to a company. So he could have told them if I needed accommodations. As it was, where I actually really don't look good is on paper. I don't express myself on paper very well. So if you look at my CV and then you speak to me in an interview, you'll find two very different Steves. And it's a shame because I don't get to some interviews where I'd get great jobs.
Yeah. I'm interested to ask as well about the kind of approach that neurodiverse individuals have in terms of innovation and problem solving within organizations. Could you talk, with first-hand experience about how you've maybe kind of taken a different approach or an innovative approach to problem solving once you're inside a new company?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. So everyone will be different to start with. But for me, a very recent one is my company recently wanted to go onto a journey building out analytics. It wasn't something we'd offered. Now I have some background in analytics, and I turned around to my boss, the CEO, and said, let me take a stab at it. And he kind of just left me alone. Before you know it, I'd built out the Azure infrastructure, I'd built out the data structure, I'd built out dashboards, I'd kind of built up a proof of concept end to end. And although I'm not an engineer at this company, and it's not my job whatsoever, because I was excited by it, again, that motivation thing, I just went and did it. I built something in a month that usually would take a team about 6 months to do. And again, it was just down to motivation. So in terms of problem solving, I think differently. So our solution, I can't talk too much because obviously I can't give away company secrets. Our data solution is actually quite different and quite nifty in terms of scale, in terms of cost than you'll see anywhere else. And it's because I think about it very, very differently. The speed at which I was able to put it together again is because the company trusted me enough to give me the freedom to it. So with problem solving, I personally am very hands-on. I involve the people that need to be involved. I don't involve other people. And when I'm free of a process, I can just kind of explode and find something. Now it's finished is where the process comes in. And this is where my experience has taught me rather than my natural kind of trait, is that I built it. It's a proof of concept. It's now something that's going to be sold to customers. So I'm now helping our engineering team to hire resources identify the internal resources that are going to take over the development of it. We're helping the internal documentation to document it, etc. So it's making sure you find that line. So, hey, go solve this. There's no reins on you. Go and do it. Great. Now it needs to be reined in. Let's go and follow the process correctly. And I think part of that's experience, part of that's the personality of neurodiverseness. But you will find that people that are neurodiverse, because we think a bit differently, often we have to understand things differently, which means most of us have got quite good big picture. Our spatial awareness of everything that connects to everything is usually slightly better than people that are a bit more niched in. And that's really, really helpful for problem solving.
Taking a very different approach, different viewpoint, and coming up with different solutions quite frequently, I think. Yeah, fantastic. Jenny, thank you for joining us. What we were looking to do was go around the room and essentially have 30-second introductions. So could you maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're hoping to take out of the event today?
I was just hoping to listen in and just hear what this was all about. So I really don't have any expectations of what I was hoping to get out of it, or I was just hoping to be a fly on the wall to listen in.
Okay, we're on the curiosity side. Now that's absolutely great. Yep. Yeah, I think it's been kind of an interesting discussion so far. We've kind of heard about Steve's journey. Some people have come to get a little bit more insight into best practices, how to formulate the right process, how to accommodate, make room. Does anyone else have any burning questions they'd like to pose to Steve at this point?
I'll try.
Okay, sure.
So, yeah, I apologize in advance if this comes across wrong or weird, but I guess my question is, because if someone does their best work when they're motivated, what about the times when maybe you need to do things that aren't so motivating, but because it's a job, and then sometimes we do those things as well. Or is it like, you know, why not put someone else on that? Like, what's the solution for there's stuff that needs to get done that maybe doesn't really motivate anyone?
That's a great question. So firstly, please don't apologize. This is an open forum. You can ask any questions. It's free from offense and judgment. So thank you. Sincere questions are the first way to learn. So I appreciate it. It's a great question. And the answer is sometimes, just like everyone else, I have to grit and bear it. Just because my motivation is lower and I might find that a little bit harder than a normal person, doesn't mean I have a right to not do it. I did have one company that accommodated me in that way. I can't mention the company names because of NDA, but I was essentially a contractor that was farmed out to another company. And I was what they called a carrot. So I was paid more than the company was paying to hire me because I looked good for the company. And that meant that they would hire additional contractors from that resourcing group. And upon realizing I was a carrot, as they referred to it, they realized that I could do more than they had contracted me to do. And what they wanted was, rather than have me on the one project that I was hired to do, they said, Steve, can you work on 10 projects? And I said, yes, but there's these following tasks that are going to burden me. And the answer to that was documentation and administration work. I said, I'm not as good at these. And if you want me to work on 10 projects and you think I'm valuable that way, instead of hiring 10 Steves, one for each project, have one Steve, have one documenter, and have one administrative assistant. And the company went and got contractors in to do that. So sometimes it's a case of, Steve, you've got to do everything, deal with it. Okay, no problem. That's why I get paid. You know, that puts a roof over my head. Everyone has parts of their job they don't like. But if you find a person particularly valuable, then you turn around and say, Steve, what can we take off your plate that will make you do more of the stuff that really is valuable to us? And I think that's where you need to decide as HR, is this person worth freeing up the capacity of the things they like, or do they just have to suck it up? Because it doesn't matter if you're neurodiverse or not. I think that's a pretty common thing that has to happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
No worries.
Excellent. I think just to go back to the comment you made about some of the more notable individuals, public figures in the neurodiverse community that have made significant contributions in their fields, do you think that came from, in very basic terms, from being given free rein or being the CEO of the company or starting up a new business venture? Is that the critical element here, to give that neurodiverse individual more freedom, more room to be creative?
To an extent, yes. But also, if you look at those individuals, I mean, Jobs and Gates, they all rejected structured education at some point in their lives as well. So, you know, you have a number of technical geniuses that have dropped out of high-profile universities. Some finished, some didn't. But among the neurodiverse ones, you find the dropout ratio of structured environments is very high. And then they moved on to do something themselves where they have creativity. I have found that earlier on in my career, I was a lot less productive than I am now. And that's because lower down you are, the more structure and repetitive tasks you have. And I think that's reasonable. You have to pay your dues. But I do think when you get people that think differently and they are in roles high enough to have a bit more freedom, that you'll find them flourish a lot more. I do certainly think that you find these people gravitate to these leadership positions, as you've said, just because they don't find many people that agree with them. So they go and work in a situation where everyone wants to do something one way, they want to do it another. They say, I'm going to go do my own thing. And because their own thing is different to everyone else, because they are different to everyone else, it succeeds. So within a company, how could you utilize that? Well, let's look at products. Well, within a company, you usually have different product lines. So, you know, within Apple, they could have iPhones, iPads, laptops. Well, if you've got someone who's neurodiverse, why don't you head them, say this person's head of iPhone, or this person's head of a specific part of iPhone. And then you give them some freedom within there. So if you've got a neurodiverse person you think is talented, struggling with structure, you can find a way to give them their own mini CEO-ship, give them their own domain to rule, so to speak, and they can create their own structure. You might find that you'll get some magic out of it, or you might find that person it doesn't suit. It's a bit of a toss-up, really.
Yeah, I think so. Stacey, I'd like to maybe bring you in. I know that you and I have talked quite a lot about the importance of the onboarding process being open and transparent in your dealings and your communication with employees. What are your thoughts to share with the group, if you like, about what you've heard may influence how you shape that onboarding process for neurodiverse talent?
I think that's a great question. I think just like with AI, how we can utilize AI to really customize the experience per the position for the candidate on particular teams. I think we have to really lean in and determine what is the best way to onboard, what's going to be the most effective, how can we tailor that experience for someone, that's neurodiverse. So again, I'm very early in this journey of exploring not only AI, but just broadening the candidate pool and finding, the most qualified candidates. And so it's very early for me, but I think we just have to continue to lean in and really focus on the entire person as a whole and what's going to work best for that person in the onboarding experience, how to best present the information and keep them engaged. And then also it's beyond onboarding, it's keeping them engaged, 30, 60, 90 days, a year later. How can we tailor that experience?
That's a really great question. I actually had a conversation with my internal HR about onboarding not even a month ago. This is very much down to individual, but some places I've gone, you have onboarding, they give you a load of stuff to read. Some places will give you a load of videos. Some places will give you someone to shadow. And it really comes down to how an individual kind of wants the information presented to them. But the first thing I do is ask them, what's best for you? So for me, the best thing is to have someone that I can talk to and I can work with, and that means I can move at my pace. So reading things frustrates me because there's endless amounts of things you can read, and it starts off with here's a few documents to read, and it turns into our induction pack is 10,000 pages long. Good luck. Videos frustrate me because they go at a pace that's either slower or faster than I want, but talking to an individual really helps. So onboarding buddies are actually fantastic things. Hey, this is your onboarding buddy. These are some materials to go through as you want. This person will answer any of your questions. Usually someone within a department can actually work with them. And what that also does, it fosters a good natural bond between your team members early on as well, because it means that as the person's learning, they're kind of working it from an individual. But I would ask someone, because again, if you have an introverted person, they might find that difficult or awkward, and they may prefer to sit and read. I know a number of people that would prefer to sit and read, honestly, but I know a number of people that like to sit and talk. Where AI actually comes in is it removes the frustration. So neurodiverse people have a tendency, and I don't want to talk about us as a whole too often because we're all different, but we have a tendency to get impatient when things are not delivered in the way or the speed that we want them. And I know if Carl's camera was on, he'd be nodding right now because he's showing the traits of someone that's actually quite quick. And where AI,
There he is.
Comes up, I can see it already. But where AI actually, I think, comes in, I've seen a number of companies that start to have AI knowledge bases. So you have plugins to things like Jira. So if you ask a question on Jira, it can learn that and goes into your AI chatbot. And instead of me having to read 5,000 different things or have a buddy if I'm introverted, even though that's not myself, I can go and type into a box that's specific to my company, has learned from Jira, has learned from my ticketing system, has learned from my wiki, whatever you've got in your company. How do I do this? How do I book holiday? And this magical AI chatbot is my best friend because it means that I wouldn't need to interact with anyone. I don't have to look stupid to anyone, and it goes exactly the pace I want. So Carl, I would really love your input about this because I'm sure you've got something you could add.
Yeah, so I mean, the holy grail of this would be, employee-facing chatbots or AI agents that can facilitate the day-to-day, right? So, I've worked the last 7 years of my career, I've worked for big tech companies, right? So Oracle and Microsoft. And there is a ton of these processes that is covered in the onboarding that you just forget, right? So when it comes time to say book a vacation, you've actually forgotten that from when you did the onboarding 6 or 8 months prior, right? So that's really the big sort of game changer for AI in the paradigm that we're in right now is just AI assistants, right? Helping people do their jobs or things that aren't part of their jobs, their day-to-day make that process a lot easier for people. And I think that's what AI will continue to do until sort of the time comes when you can automate large processes. And then you need to start looking at different strategies for that in terms of how you manage your people. But for sure, 100% agree.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Stacy, to both Steve and Carl. So
Mhm.
as you're talking about this, what's coming to my mind is there's a tool called Tango, and you can actually, very quickly, document steps on how to do something. And so to me, when you're talking about AI and the chatbot, you could, have a tool where the employee goes in and they say they need to know how to do something very specific, or they need to know how to navigate, something in Workday. They could talk to the chatbot, it would pop up the Tango, and that interaction would be, it would eliminate the need to talk to someone. They could get that resource from the chatbot, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. It means that everyone, and that means that person also doesn't need to reveal themselves if they don't want anyone to know. It gives people privacy if they want, but they can still reach out to you if they want to. Some people will still go ask a person. It will happen. The holy grail, and I'm sure we're not far away from it, is you type to the chatbot, "Hi chatbot, how do I book holiday?" And it sends back an article, and you go, "Oh, okay, chatbot, can you book my holiday for me?" Well, it's not far off the chatbot being able to go, "No problem, Steve. We put in a holiday request for you for whatever days you want. This is the process. Your manager's been notified. They will let you know." I mean, that's really not far off.
No, I mean,
yeah, that makes sense.
So you can actually already do that. The thing is that if you want to do that today, it's a little bit roundabout from a technical perspective. So you need sort of a system in between the model and the system where the thing is going to be done. You need an agent in between that does this all for you. But the next sort of big aspect is the transition from large language models to large action models. So models that can perform actions on your behalf based on the input that you give it. So as Steve says, this is right around the corner that large action models will become more prevalent.
And I think that is because people have asked about AI specifically. This is where AI is going to be great, because it gives people the dignity to not talk about something if they don't want to, because they talk to a chatbot that doesn't know them. It's private and it does it for them. It'll be fantastic.
Thank you.
I think you're right. So we're right up to the end of the time slot. If anyone has a remaining question, I just have one more. If anyone can spare another 60 seconds, which was really around, and maybe this is addressed to Steve, is how do you see this evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think we'll get to a kind of utopia scenario where workplaces have figured it all out and it's working and it's flowing, or do you see more challenges on the horizon?
I think we're going to see neurodiversity split and defined in more ways than ever before. And as someone, I forget who it was, I apologize, early said, we're all on some sort of spectrum. No one is normal, so to speak. There are just people that are society's current definition of normal. But I do think that as diversity goes forwards, similar to go back a couple of 100 years, there were no women in the workforce. And then women were, oh, they have to be in the workforce. And then they were, oh, women are good in the workforce. And now you may look at teams and go, hey, we don't have enough women or don't have enough men. If we get, someone else in and we kind of build our diversity out, we'll have a more balanced team. I think neurodiversity will go the same way. Hey, we don't have a dyslexic person or an ADHD person. They think differently. Let's get one in and bring some variation to this team. I think that's where I'd like to see it happening. But realistically, I think that the definition of spectrum and society's normal will just change. Post-COVID, more people are coming out with different disorders of anxieties and similar. And because they're getting diagnosed for that, they're getting diagnosed for neurodiverse conditions. People like Carl that suddenly may never not have ever even realized, and you're not diagnosed yet, but I'm sure you've got something. But you start talking to people and listening to things in the media and you realize, hey, that sounds like me, which is a really familiar story for a lot of people. So I think neurodiversity is more common than we know. And I think it's going to become even more common. But I also think it's something that we celebrated, similar to having men and women, or someone from India, someone from America, some from the UK, because different nationalities have different education systems that bring different perspectives, and that's fantastic to have in a team. I think it'll go the same way.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's been a very informative and very valuable session. I hope everyone equally derived strong value. Thank you for the applause there for Steve. Well expressed. So thank you, everybody. And just to finish, were there any other questions at this point from any of the audience? No? Okay, great stuff. Well, if there are any things that come up afterwards, we will provide, obviously, if it's okay with you, Steve, we'll provide you contact details. People can feel free to follow up. If anyone wants a copy of the recording that they can then distribute or share, that'll come out in the next 24 hours. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Steve, for your time, and we will see you hopefully on the next webinar.
Just to end up, sorry guys, anyone that does have a question that they may be scared to ask, someone apologized for asking one earlier. I will keep any questions to myself if it's asked that way, but I open up to any questions. It doesn't matter what they are. There are no stupid questions when you're trying to learn about something, so it's to everyone's benefit. Please don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Take care.
Bye now.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.